We all have a story, and all Star Wars fans have a Star Wars story. Join James as he talks with a special guest each episode to share their Star Wars story. Here's James.
Hey everyone, welcome to Outlander Club. I'm James. This is the show where we hear about your Star Wars stories. Joining me today is Scotty Hawk from Hawk's Holocrons. Scotty, what's up?
What's happening, man? It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a
We got to get another
time.
DC. I mean, we don't have to, but
yeah,
when DC hypes us up again,
we were like daily for a while, and then it just stopped. But life comes at you fast, as Ferris Bueller once said, and to make it a sequel spin-off series of Ferris Bueller because why not? Money talks. So that's what they're like. Yeah, whatever. We'll see what happens there. It's intriguing. But today we're going to talk about your Star Wars story. Literally, for anybody that doesn't know, this show we literally just go through the Star Wars story, how you got into it, and where you are now in it. And obviously, you're in deep because your channel is called Hawk's Holocrons, which is a minor Star Wars reference that some newbies might not get. Not even newbies anymore, but some diehard lore fans might not even get it because I believe, Scotty, most people that I would say the general audience of Star Wars would call it either a wayfinder or that triangle thing that Kylo Ren has in the last Star Wars movie. Those are exactly what I think they would call them.
You're right. I think the first mention's probably Maul in Rebels or the Clone Wars, some Clone Wars episodes, but they're shying away from that stuff. I think they're waiting though, because it's a lot of history in the Holocrons.
I will say before we get into this, I think they were shying away from it. I think they're slowly starting to embrace it and understand the lore and understand what the lore means to a lot of fans. All right, let's move on now to your Star Wars story. Do you remember the very first time you were introduced to Star Wars, whether it was a movie, an action figure, or a comic book or a cartoon? Like, do you remember the first time you were exposed to the galaxy far, far away?
I can't remember too far back. I know I was definitely like very involved and active as a fan during the prequels. I'm sure I had seen the originals on TV. Never saw them in theaters. But really, like, the prequels was where it was at for me as a kid. I remember seeing, I think my friend actually has posters of when Spike TV released the first time it ever been aired or whatever, a Star Wars film. So that poster is pretty cool and nostalgic to have. But I was in high school, middle school during that time.
So it wasn't something that when you were born, it was just like thrown in your face. It was something that you had to discover on your own, basically, or with the help of friends, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Like my family, I don't think my parents were really into it either. It was just something that I, through school, I played a lot of Magic the Gathering. Like before I was into anything, we were just playing card games, and then I think I've pretty much found all of my nerdy stuff through Magic and the group of friends that I was playing Magic with.
I have never played Magic. I've seen the cards at Walmart
now, man.
I know everything's coming back now. I think Stranger Things probably has a lot to do with like the Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that.
The board game.
Yeah,
fantasies.
For sure. Yep. Yeah, for sure. That helps out a lot. So you're playing that. Do you remember? Did you see any of the prequels in the theater, were those all home video too? You saw all of them.
So we saw all of them. The weekend I think that Phantom Menace came out, I definitely saw it like three times minimum between Friday and Saturday. But yeah.
And you weren't even like, you saw it that many times and you weren't even a diehard fan yet.
No, this was the point. Like, I had seen him on TV a bunch, and this was the first time we were getting another Star Wars movie in a long time. So I had been like watching and kind of into it. But I just remember everybody going crazy when that came out. And I live in a small town, so you could literally come out of the theater, go buy another ticket, and go again. It wasn't like they're not selling out in my town. So it was a good time. They were
begging you to come back.
Yeah.
So what did you know about like going? You watch the originals on TV. You don't really have the greatest like vivid memories of watching them or in order or anything like that. Was like the Luke, I am your father, was Vader being his father a shock to you, or is that something that you don't remember? You just kind of knew because you saw.
I don't even remember the reveal. It was that long ago. I don't remember those big reveals. I remember just hearing the stories of Anakin as a kid, the Darth Maul reveal, getting those intense lightsaber battles, because all we had seen before that was the OT trilogy. They had to do what they could do. And it's almost shameful now to say this, but the OT for me, it's a hard watch. Like I know the stories. I've seen them so many times. I'm one of these fans who's just pushing Disney to do new stuff. Like the franchise is in a weird place. We need to get that prequel feeling again, man. I don't think that had that same feeling for the sequels. Some fans did. I definitely did for Force Awakens, but slowly lost it after that.
Well, I think your generation, you coming up, having the original trilogy, a TV show basically for you. It was like something you watched on TV. So it's more TV. And then the prequels come. And I think this is something that gets lost on a lot of the old fans now, not even older fans, like old fans, like my age and over now, is the prequels came out 20 plus years ago. And they were very different from the original. They were very similar, but very different from the original trilogy. Obviously, very heavy on CG, even though the Phantom Menace has the most miniatures. Very heavy on CG. But, like Jar Jar, little things like that I don't think people grasped at the time. And I always mention this, though, is like George Lucas always told Lana at best, he goes, just wait in 20 years. The kids now are going to love you. And it's true. That's what's happened now. And I think what you're saying about the sequels, I think that might happen as well with the sequels. Time will tell, obviously. But but the biggest thing was when the sequels came, they kind of, and you can't blame Disney because they only bought Lucasfilm 7 years after Revenge of the Sith, right? So you can't really necessarily blame them. The prequels weren't critically acclaimed. I don't think they weren't as beloved as the original Star Wars. And when Disney purchased it, I think they saw that and they said, okay, let's go back to the roots. Not understanding that only in 5, 6, 7, 8 years, those 8, 10-year-olds are going to be 20-year-olds and are going to look back and be like, well, where's my Star Wars that I grew up with? And so you lose that. And we won't get into it too much, but that's your era. So what was your first thought of like a Jar Jar Binks when you saw Jar Jar? Because you say you were in high school?
Yeah, high school, middle school. I remember people liking Jar Jar. Like he was annoying, but he was like the lovable. He was like the lovable dope. Yeah. I don't remember the hate or even him speaking out or talking about it ever. I do remember the Jake Lloyd stuff. Like child actors, though, me growing up in that time, child actors were a huge thing. I feel like I grew up with Britney Spears and Justin Timberlake, like because they were all in the news so much. All of the the Disney kids too, like they're my age. A lot of them are struggling now. It's so crazy to think about what it does to a person. But none of the Jar Jar was hilarious for me. But I also, I have an uncle who teaches literature. And so when he looks at the writings of this accents they use, the way he speaks, he's like, it's pretty controversial if you ask him. He sees all the controversy as far as like this character's kind of out of place in a lot of the writing, but along with the Asian accents that they used for the infamous memes. But that's kind of what he was looking at, like very out of the box decision compared to the OT movies, But I think that's where it started to get political for a lot of people. A lot of the older fans were like, what is this?
Yeah, I remember that came up and a lot of people complained. There's a lot of sitting around talking and blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I'm with you, though. I walked in and I loved it. My first experience with Jar Jar Binks was I was in, this is obviously 20-something years ago. I was in high school. And I remember the internet was this brand new thing and no one really knew what you could do with it. But you could like read news articles on it. And there was all these articles about Jar Jar Binks and how viewers who just went to go see the movie absolutely hated Jar Jar Binks. So like the movie is great, but I just couldn't stand Jar Jar. And so going into the movie for me, I was like, oh, how bad is this character? And I ended up loving Jar Jar Binks.
But everybody can quote him. Everybody can do the voice. Everybody can do the voice.
Yeah, you got to give Lucas credit on that one. Let's go on to Attack of the Clones now. You're a little bit older. You know a little bit more about Star Wars now. So in between Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, were you still up on Star Wars, or were you just kind of like it'll come when it comes and I like it, or did you start obsessing over it?
I think that's where the obsession started. Darth Maul, Ray Park. He was also in one of the X-Men movies.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, dude. So I to this day love Ray Park. He did the mocap in the final episodes of the Clone Wars. Mm-hmm. You can see him on screen. It's just like I'm getting chills talking about it. The Clone Wars, though, man. People, I don't know if you played the Lego game that just came out recently, but
not the new one.
Dude, the Clone Wars and the Battle on Naboo, that brought me back. You're in the fight, and if say what you want about the Clone Wars, but you cannot take away from the graphics, the blue globes, the force shields. Like that entire scene was one of the top tier battle scenes, I think, in Star Wars. Visually.
I agree. It felt like the Phantom Menace felt a lot like Return of the Jedi and A New Hope, kind of like colliding and becoming something. Like it's poetry, it rhymes. Mm-hmm. That's what it always felt like to me. It's like, okay, they're doing this in reverse. But when Attack of the Clones came out, obviously they recast Anakin Skywalker. Now you go from Jake Lloyd, who everybody over 30 had a problem with because people are jerks, and now you've got Hayden Christensen coming in to play him. What did you think of Anakin when you saw Attack of the Clones?
I related a lot to Anakin, I feel like. As far as like being, a kid who grew up in a single parent household, his dad, obviously, there's a lot of issues. He was raised by his uncle. But I see the struggle that he went through, man. And I related a lot to him. I relate a lot more to Anakin, I feel like, than I do to Luke, even now. So when people are like, feeling a lot of ways about the decisions they made with Luke, I'm like, you need to think about all the things he went through, man. And he knows now everything that his dad went through too. The whole family history is dark, and it starts in the prequels. I hope that, because even the bad moments or the bad writing moments throughout this trilogy, it's people are picking fun now, like literal fun. I hope that someday we get to that with the sequels and some more of the because Star Wars is supposed to be fun. Some of these jokes are meant to just be jokes and not they're supposed to kind of take you out of the moment, because that humor has always been there.
I think something that does get lost with Star Wars, and I don't know if this is the case of any other franchise, because Star Wars is so unique in how it was 77 and now it's 2022 and it's still a thing, but it disappeared for so long, came back. Disappeared for so long, came back. It's kind of unique in that sense, and it's and it's the appreciation of it. But then there's this weird over evaluation of what it is. It's like people you take it as gospel and fact. It's like no, like you just said, it's for fun. And George Lucas, how many times do you have to say it's for 12-year-olds?
Yeah,
and then it's like and it's funny because we'll get to the sequels in a bit, but people talk about The Last Jedi, and I always say The Last Jedi is like the most overrated and underrated Star Wars of all time, because I feel like and it's not a knock if it's your favorite Star Wars. It's not a knock on that. Like it's allowed to be your, because it's subjective, it could be your person. But I just think as a grand scheme of things, people overhype it and then they hate it a little bit too much, and it comes down to this thought of what Star Wars is, and there's like a misunderstanding of it. And I think it's because of all the time that's passed. It's like you forget that Jar Jar Binks was written by the guy who created this thing. C-3PO in the original trilogy has a lot of the same lines as Jar Jar Binks. The voices are a little different. Maybe that changes it. But I think that's one of the things with Star Wars is like it's meant to be fun. This should be a fun ride. Sit down and enjoy it, and don't overthink what you're watching.
That's the key thing. There's the overthinking and getting like the one line that you just hold on to, that one thing that happened in the movie and that ruins the rest of the movie for you. I think that's a obvious sign that you got to step back and kind of just reevaluate why you're watching the franchise. Go back, watch the movies that you grew up loving watching, It's not the same. I don't think it's ever gonna be the same. I hope that we can get back to some semblance of it. I would love to see them I think they're doing this on purpose. They're not giving us anything. I would like to see them announce something that's not even connected to like High Republic, Old Republic, any of the stuff we know now. Give us a future. I mean, even if it's Rey out there in the future, but like do something. Do something. Don't be afraid just because this one trilogy didn't do as well as the fans, wasn't as well received. But don't hold back now, in my opinion. I feel like Andor, no offense, I feel like some of these projects we're getting is kind of a little like pat on the head, like, oh, here you go. It's going to be okay, guys. This is for you now.
They have to figure out the movies. And I think one of the mistakes that was made, I don't know how we're jumping ahead on this, but one of the mistakes that might have been made for the movies was playing it like the MCU when it's Lord of the Rings. I think that was like Star Wars isn't the MCU, it's more Lord of the Rings. And that's the way I think. And I think they and it made sense though that Disney would be like, well, MCU successful, even in 2012, it was super successful and everything. So it would make sense like, oh, they're going to do the same thing. And then when you think about it, it's like, no, Star Wars is not the MCU. You got to build like this. And everyone complains, oh, we're back on Tatooine, we're more Skywalkers. It's like, yeah, but Star Wars is Tatooine and Skywalkers.
Yes.
Like if you remove all that, you remove Star Wars. And I think again, it comes down to people and this grant, like overestimating what Star Wars is. It's like, oh, it's this big thing. We want to stay away from this. But if you stay away from it, and I say this all the time to Brock on the podcast, if you stay away from it, then you're getting Valerian. Like what makes Star Wars, and what makes, Blade Runner, it's different. They're very different. And these are aspects of Star Wars that should remain. As much as we want the galaxy to grow, if you don't keep it like that family story, the Skywalker family story, and it does, like, you can move on, but it's all got to start with the original trilogy here. And then you have the rings and you can go out, but it always has to come back to, I would say Empire Strikes Back is like the middle of it all. And it all has to come back to that one, and then you can expand outward from there. But you have to understand, and I think The Mandalorian does it very well in that and I know people are like, but it's fan services. But it's like, yes, but also it all exists in this world, and we're right here. And so you got to branch out, and to branch out, you have to go in, and then you can get further along, but you always have to acknowledge the history of Star Wars, which is what we've seen.
And this, like, Mandalorian is a perfect example of the history of Star Wars that we've never even heard about. Now, literally know minimal about all of their histories. So tell those stories. I think that's a perfect opportunity to bring in the nostalgia, but like Andor is kind of opposite for me because we know who the rebels are. Like we've met numerous people who have been fighting this fight. What makes this one guy, you know what I mean? Like why do I care about this one dude's story so much that's going to stand out so much differently? Again, people are going to say it's fan service. They have over 200 named characters on the show. So literally not extras. So yeah. But do big stuff like that. Give us it. Give us everything. Don't hold back, in my opinion.
They should have. I think they should have. Woulda, coulda. In my opinion, I should say that is they shouldn't have focused heavily on a quote unquote Skywalker saga, and they should have. And I don't think I should stop saying they should have, but the ending it at 9, I think, was also a misstep in their part. They should, you finish that, let them finish that trilogy or whatever, and then give 10, 11, 12, and just keep that going. And then you can branch off. You can make the next one about Rey, and if you don't want it to be about Rey can kind of show up and then branch off to this person. But like I said, it's all going
in my opinion, man, too. Like Rey, she never even had to have any connection to the OT at all. At first, we could have seen a whole trilogy with her just trying to figure the Force out on her own. And then in the third movie is when you get the first hint of like, oh, this is about Luke and Palpatine and the OT. But we didn't need Han Solo. We didn't need his kid, really. Like,
no.
So, and it all contradicts the comics that people love too. So, like, we had Solo twins. Why are you guys doing this?
Well, I guess it was like because they were doing a part reboot, part sequel, and you got to bring the old cast in.
Yeah.
But anyway, we won't get into it. Let's go into
right. Yeah,
let's
we could
go
be
into
there all day.
let's go into Revenge of the Sith.
I think the main thing I was trying to get at is like, because we were talking about content that they're coming out with. It's like when they go to the OT stuff and you complain about it, in my opinion, eventually they're just going to stop going to that well. Like it's going to run dry. And then, so you guys are basically the people who are really digging deep into the, like, not even trying to be positive about it. You are killing that part of the timeline, in my opinion. But
no, I wouldn't completely disagree with that, because I think, there's only so much water in the well, and you can only go to it so many times. Let's go to Revenge of the Sith now. You're getting older. It's getting darker. This is now the moment everyone's been waiting for. We're going to see Anakin transform into Darth Vader. James Earl Jones is back. He already recorded his dialogue for it. They went to Italy to record a volcano erupting. There's a lot going on with this movie that we were going into it. How excited were you leading into it? Did you find yourself like Googling stuff? I don't even know if you can Google back then. Were you online on search engines back then looking for things? Did you go on forums, or did you just go into it blind?
At this point, I don't think I was even really watching trailers like that. I would watch them when they come out, but I wasn't trying to look up theories. I don't even remember if people were really speculating all that much on these movies, because we kind of knew where it was going based on the OT.
They were.
Yeah, and for me, like, I was not a sweaty when it comes to that at that point in my life. But the Anakin story, again, so fascinating to me. The Jedi, dude, like, I have turned against the Jedi myself. I agree with Luke. I think it's time for them to end. But it's cool because the more the light side gets built up, the more the dark builds up. So there's a constant balance. And the Darth Vader story, I think, is just one of many we're going to see. I just hope this timeline keeps going. There has to be repercussions now for what has happened. Him and Obi-Wan's relationship. I love that Dave Filoni came out and, broke it down for me like I'm 5 with if Qui-Gon survived, and he would have been the father figure that Anakin needed. And Anakin didn't need a brother. Didn't even really want a brother in Obi-Wan. And I don't know if Obi-Wan was even ready to train him. And this is all like part of the Jedi just rushing him because they thought he was the chosen one, or, or otherwise. I'm still fascinated by those prophecies. I think they still are things in the Jedi text that we don't even know about, things they could introduce. But, every time they try to introduce a new thing, it's tough.
It's very hard. This is where,
with Force abilities, even, like, we know Jedi are capable of doing amazing things. We have not seen half of the stuff they can do that's been written in comics or novels. It's like, when they introduce that, are people gonna freak out?
I know.
I'm ready.
They will, but those people, they won't be around forever, and then we'll move on. But this is one thing that you just mentioned, though, is the Jedi text and all that. I'm fascinated with all that stuff too, but I don't know if I'm fascinated as much now as I would have been if George Lucas wrote it, because I want to know what was going. It's not really disrespecting new writers, but I want to know what was going through his head when he was coming up with that stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, I want to know the actual origins of it all, because I can make something up. You can make. I want to know what his actual thoughts were, and this goes back to his original sequel trilogy that Disney shut down, and I agree with Disney on their decision. I disagree with it, trust me, but I also agree with it. Like, if I were to be Disney, I would have shut that down as well, because this is now mine. And the other thing too is everyone, like, so many people hated the prequels at the time, that his sequel trilogy, let's be honest, as much hate as the sequel trilogy got, his sequel trilogy would have got just as much, or maybe even more hate. You don't even know. And, like, so let's not pretend that, if he would have done his sequels, everybody would have been all happy and well and good. That, I don't think it would have been the case. I think it would have been hated. But the
roles, I think, would have just been reversed. It would have been new fans. New fans would have been on that side of it, and the OT people would be out here championing it because it was George Lucas's creation. And it's like, for me, I just don't think that anything has to be the Bible when it comes to Star Wars. Like, he has laid the groundwork. Like, let's build off that now. Let's go to places like they did in Visions. I think Visions was
a great idea.
best idea they could have ever done. Do more of that, because it's gonna lighten the blow when things become decanonized or retconned.
And I think there's too much emphasis on canon. Like you just chill. Like okay, if you're telling the through line, like episode 9, episode 10, 11, fine. Then like I said, like this has to be your history all the way back to episode 1 is your history. But if you just strip the word canon away and you're like, just have fun in this universe like Visions did, we could get so much fun stories and you don't have to sweat. Like, I mean, if you're going to movies, I think movies should all be connected for Star Wars. Like that should be how it is. TV shows, yeah. But video games, screw it. Just have some. I mean, I love Fallen Order. I've actually all the video games pretty much that they've all like 2 of them because they don't make any anymore. But just screw it. Who cares if it's canon? It's a video game. Let's just have fun. Like make an open world Star Wars game. Don't obsess over chronological events or anything. Just go for it. And I think but for some reason there's this like everything's got to be connected. And if
I'm one of those people. I like.
But you like the Lego games.
Yeah, and I like that I do like the Lego games, but like when it comes to a lore, like you're building a lore, I want the MCU style. I want to be able to read a comic at the same time I'm watching a film and be like, dude, they're referencing the page that I'm holding in my hand right here. And I want to know that matters. It really bugs me that I have to pick and choose and guess and check what is and isn't. So for me, I'm like, everything is until they prove to me it isn't. Because that's just my simple way of living, and I'm happy.
But here's my argument against what you said about the MCU. Is that's true to an extent, but then there are other issues of the comic that have nothing to do with the story they're telling. Like, because it's based off the material. Star Wars isn't based off any material, right? That's the difference. And I think some comics should
I hope we can get to a day where it is, where they're writing comics and then making films and they're all based on each other. I wish for that for Star Wars.
That'd be cool, but I don't know if they'll ever do that. I think there might be some stories that they should. I think Lost Stars would be a good movie. They should do that. No, I mean that is now.
That's what I'm saying. You can build more off that stuff. You
can't, but I don't think everyone should be. I think they should have let Legends continue. Is what I'm saying. Like they should have you should have Legends, and you should have your canon, because there's too many.
Let's make Legends movies. You know what's stopping you?
People, I don't know.
Well,
people were confused when Rogue One came out because they're like, "Where's Rey?" It's like people don't understand.
So what were your thoughts? Got to re-release it in IMAX.
What were your thoughts on? But Rogue One, like, was that your favorite Rogue One? But Revenge of the Sith, when you saw it, we're going right back to this now. Was that your favorite Star Wars movie at the time, or did you have mixed feelings on it? What did you make of Revenge of the Sith?
I think it's still one of my favorites. I think the entire Anakin arc is one of the best arcs. I mean, he is Darth Vader, one of the most infamous villains. And the fact that his backstory was written so well, I don't think they'll ever be able to pull it off again. I think they tried, but they got to either go real accurate to what George Lucas was doing, or, in my opinion, way outside the box. And for me, too, it's like when I show people Star Wars, do you show them in the release order? Do you give them the I Am Your Father first and then go to the prequels? Because I think that's how you should experience it for the first time, in my opinion.
You're probably, I think, yeah.
Because the prequels do ruin the reveal,
I have never watched Star Wars with someone for the first time. The first time I watched it with my wife, she had seen the original trilogy, but she hadn't seen the prequels, and I didn't know that. She said she did. And so I remember I put on The Phantom Menace was the first one I put on, because I have the Blu-ray, the 6-pack Blu-ray that came out like 15 years ago.
Yes.
And I put in Phantom Menace, and she was like, I wanted to watch one with Darth Vader. And I said, that is Darth Vader. And we watched all 3 of the prequels in one day. And then the next day we watched the originals. But I haven't had a chance to watch it with anyone for the first time. And I don't disagree with you, because I think that I Am Your Father moment, if you can avoid having that ruined for you, which in this day and age is nearly impossible. That's something that, and I'm someone who grew up with the movies, so I don't even I always just knew that Vader was Luke's father growing up. I don't know if I was ever, in shock or anything, because I would have been like, it just was part of my growing up. My existence was knowing that. So I think I agree with you where you should watch it, or at least that machete order where you watch like, what is it, like Phantom Menace?
I like that they skip one of the films entirely.
Phantom
I actually think it is the Phantom Menace.
Yeah, I would never skip that movie. Anyone that knows me, I would never skip it.
Blasphemy.
Yeah, but I would do like if I didn't do it original then prequel, I would do that machete order so that you still have that experience.
It's a fun way to watch. I want to do that sometime. I don't think I ever have.
Yeah, I've never done it. I literally just throw it.
I'm too lazy to like look up a list and now check that one off.
I feel like maybe I should. I need to get one of those old. I don't know if they did it for DVDs, but they did it for CDs where you have like the 6 CD player, and I should put all my Blu-rays in.
Put them in order so you know. Yeah. That's so funny.
Boom. I wonder if you could. You could probably make a playlist on Disney that I could do it in order or something. I don't know. Can you make a playlist?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't go on Disney.
You need to pitch that to them. There should be machete order on there.
They should. That'd be awesome. Clone Wars. I don't know if that needs to be in proper order as well. All right. So let's. Did you get into Clone Wars right away? Like, were you like, Revenge of the Sith, it's come and gone, let's get into Clone Wars, or were you
like the cartoon?
Yeah, the cartoon, because I didn't get into it. Yeah, neither did I.
No, dude, there are so many episodes of the Clone Wars I've never seen. I think I got into like the final season, and that's about it.
The last season's fantastic. Yeah,
but I know the stories. At this point, I was the lore master or whatever, like doing my homework, looking up everything I needed to know about it, because after the prequels I was fully invested as a Star Wars fan.
Okay, fully invested. Did you get into any, like, because you said Magic the Gathering, I know they have some of those like board games for Star Wars. Did you get into any of those games?
No video games really for me. Battlefront 1, Force Unleashed, and trying to think. I wasn't the MMOs. Like, I never really played any of the computer games. I don't know if I had a computer growing up. I was a console kid, but definitely got like way into the Star Wars video games. Played all of the PlayStation video games. Really enjoyed them. That was where my love for Star Wars continued to grow.
Battlefront was like that game was celebrated in a lot of ways. Let's rewind a little bit, because you say that. And you probably didn't, but have you ever got into Shadows of the Empire on any level? Like, maybe not when it came out, but like since then, have you ever gone back and visited? Have you had any interest to?
No, I don't think anyone's ever really. I don't think anyone's ever really like been you. No one's ever like, you should really look at this. I've never had anybody.
We did a podcast. It's Shadows of the Empire. I will give you some history lesson. Is the coolest thing to happen to Star. It's basically, I think it was George Lucas's way to see if Star Wars was still popular. Like if he was like, can he do the prequels? So they released Shadows of the Empire. It was a novel. It was a video game. It was a comic. It was a soundtrack. They had a music score for it. It was all those things, and they all kind of. I don't think they were the same story. They all kind of connected. So. And so it takes place in between Empire and Jedi, and Han Solo's frozen, and they got to figure it out. And there's actually a chapter in it that is very reminiscent of Rey and the Stormtrooper in The Force Awakens using the Jedi mind trick for the first time. Very reminiscent of that. But it was all those things. It was really cool. We did the video game our first year on, like 6 years ago. We did an episode all on Shadows of the Empire, and we talked all about it. Okay. And Brock played the game on his N64. We bought it for like $6 on eBay. It's probably way more now. Yeah, we were like, we need to get a copy, so we bought it. Yeah. But I don't know if I'd recommend it, just because N64, the graphics are kind of hard to.
Oh, I'll watch. I can go watch this stuff on.
Yeah, you can watch it and check it out. And like the book, the now it's Legends now, but it's a really good story. Dash Rendar is basically just Han Solo.
I know the name. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was like
very popular guy.
It was so cool because it was Battlefront came out, it was so popular, but in the 90s it was Shadows of the Empire, and it kind of reinvigorated the world into Star Wars, and our love for Star Wars kind of came back. And they had action figures as well. There was so much going on, and Prince Shizor, which was I can't remember the species name now. That alien has shown up, I think, in Obi-Wan, like some Solo, like so that's come up.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I hope they kind of play with that a little bit, but it's between the Empire and Jedi. We don't need any more stories in between that time, but it's definitely something I would recommend checking out. Maybe not playing the game because it's going to be an eyesore, but
yeah,
it's like 20 something years old. But yeah, definitely check that out. All right. 2012 now, you're like, I'm too cool for Clone Wars. I'll play some video games. Disney buys Lucasfilm. Did you have any thoughts on that? Or were you kind of like, no, fine?
I don't think I really had too many thoughts on it. I have the same thoughts every time Disney buys something. So that's like, I love that meme where it's like the Disney Federation has now purchased Mars and is threatening intergalactic war with, it's like, where's Disney going to stop with the amount of stuff they can purchase? But at the same time, I was like, this is awesome because, it's Disney. They have the resources. They're now pushing the envelope with things like the volume. But yeah, I hope they can innovate the cinema more the way that George was trying to do. I like that when they take chances. I feel like that's why I like The Last Jedi so much. Because I just want them to do stuff like that. Introduce a Snoke. Don't connect it. Like we know there's dark side out there. There has to be. So,
okay. My biggest issue was Snoke. Biggest issue with Snoke, Scotty. And people are going to yell at me. And you said, don't connect it. Fine. But we need, because the Force Awakens, Last Jedi, Rise take place for 30 years before, after Phantom Menace, 60 years after, how many years after Phantom Menace? However many years after Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
Because we know that history, right? So we know all that. So the problem is Snoke existed in episodes 1 through episode 6.
If he was a different person. Right.
Well, and the thing is, the explanation we ended up getting he's a clone. That's all you need. Like, you just need to explain, only because everyone makes the comparison to the Emperor, and they're like, we didn't know who the Emperor was. We didn't have a history when we met the Emperor. There was no episode 1, 2, 3. We were getting in there, so you don't need a history because he's just showing up. But when you have that history, we need to know, why didn't Snoke peek his head out when the Emperor wasn't? Like, why didn't the Emperor know? But so those are my biggest. And then obviously they do the clone thing. You're like, well, that is the easiest way out you could do, but Star Wars has never been above taking the easy way out. Let's just get that out of the way. So I had no problem with that. But that was my one thing with Snoke when they just kill him off. I'm like, but we need to know. Like, there needs to be.
There's a lot of things I still need to know.
Well, and that was, again, I don't think Star Wars works. You know what ruined Star Wars? Luke, I am your father. Because now everything has to be hidden and there's a mystery. And I kind of, one thing, and when they were like, raise a nobody in The Last Jedi, it's like, well, at least he tried to like shut everybody up and move on. It's like, there was at least that. And then he's like, well, he lied. You weren't a nobody. You're like, oh my God. Like, and so that was the worst thing that could have happened to Star Wars was that twist, because now everyone feels like there has to be a twist. What's the twist? And then the filmmakers almost feel like there needs to be. Like, the prequels don't have any twists. Like, there's not one twist in the prequel. I think he doesn't even really try. He's just like, these are them. But now everybody's like, what's the twist? Who's this? Who's connected to that? And it's like, it doesn't necessarily need to be about that. But again, like, that was my biggest thing with Snoke, though, was like, everyone's like, you don't need it because the Emperor, but they're very different. We have a history. Once you have a history, like I said, you have to treat what came before you like the history, like our history books. You have to know what happened, even though we try to ignore our history books. You have to know what happened, and so in order to make any of these characters make sense, we have to be able to connect them in whatever way.
Yeah. So I think they did underestimate the fans wanting the connections, wanting everything. Like, the time jump for me from the beginning was very confusing. It's like, you could still tell Rey's story, you could still put her at a particular age, but just have it happen literally right after Luke did the thing. And now her trilogy can take her out into the future while he's doing his stuff, and then they meet when he's older. Same way. But what they I think are trying to attempt to do now is they're going to fill that gap in the same way that they did with the Clone Wars material, with Rebels. Hopefully we get just a lot more live action with that. But I mean, we have voice actors still, so you can get Mark Hamill to do anything. You can probably get Adam Driver to do anything voice acting wise. So yeah, give me a show of those two young, they got to save face with Luke with a lot of fans. And I think bringing in Shamook and showing the effort on CGI material and trying to bring Luke literally back to life, I think it's a good step in the right direction.
Am I the only one that likes the Luke Skywalker and Mandalorian and Boba Fett? Like I have no issue with that.
No, I like him, but I do like to pick fun at it because it's we now have the faceless, soulless embodiment of Luke because of so much of the hate. I don't think that this was ever a part of the plan.
No,
I don't think telling young Luke anything was part of the plan ever. I think they were trying to just have him be a big part of their trilogy, send him off into the sunset respectfully, and then potentially be able to tell their new stuff. But because that has now obviously not worked out the way they planned, I think they're going to have to double down, fill in all the gaps, the poetry side of things, and get everybody to try to relate to the choices that Luke made.
Yeah, I like the way you said how they could have done Rey here and then Luke here, and then they could have met. Because the one thing they always say, like from Michael Arndt's time, was like once Luke hits the page, all anyone cares about is Luke. And I've always thought that
Disney said that.
Yeah, everybody said that, and I'm like, this is like a misunderstanding of everything almost. Because when Luke hits the page, it shouldn't be like Luke Skywalker in the original trilogy isn't a myth. Like no one knows who he is. He doesn't want anyone to know who he is. He kind of does everything quietly on the side. But in these movies, they made him be this heroic myth, and it's like, does that make like that's one of my thing. I'm like, I don't even know if that's how it should have been, because it's like the writers put too much stock into Luke Skywalker. I'm like watching The Force Awakens.
They said the same thing about Palpatine. Every time they would bring Luke's name up or Luke was in a scene, it just was taken over by Luke and overshadowed every other character. It's like, that's what Star Wars is, man. No one's going to complain about that.
And it's true. And then at least make it about something, but instead they kind of shied away from him and they put him on an island for no reason.
Yeah.
And like, they don't, like, I mean, okay, in The Last Jedi, you get the reason, blah, blah, blah. But there's no reason in The Force Awakens. It's like, he went there. Why?
But why couldn't he have been doing all the stuff before he went there while we were also getting the Rey? Like, I just think... And it's all, fan films, or 9 times out of 10, they're better than the stuff we see in cinema. But like, I just imagine if Rey was slowly discovering stuff on her own while Luke's out there slowly discovering stuff on his own, and have Rey be the one who finds out she's a Palpatine, but have it at the exact same time that maybe Luke figures it out too. And it's like, now they're both face to face. They both have this knowledge. She's handing the lightsaber to him, and he's like, I know that what I should do right now with this lightsaber is, they just could have done more compelling things, and, shying away from Luke was a mistake. And I think we're going to get a lot more Luke now because of it.
Yeah, you might be right.
Maybe not a lot, because I don't know how much they're going to be able to pull with the CGI stuff, man.
No, I think that, time will tell on that. Let's move on to Force Awakens now. We got 2012, Disney buys it, and then 2015, the movie comes out. How was your Star Wars fan geeking out, your fandom? Were you growing in that period of time? Or again, were you just kind of like staying even keel until you got to The Force Awakens? And when and how many times did you see Force Awakens in the theater?
I think I saw The Force Awakens twice. I was geeking out. When it came out of the movie. I immediately did an Instagram reaction. Was telling everybody about this. I was like, man, the future of Star Wars is bright. I was like, they're going to do some crazy stuff here. And then they did some crazy stuff that no one expected. And I think I was still hyped up even after fan reactions. But it was very nostalgic, the first one. A lot of parallels with The New Hope. I troll fans now because they want to troll my movie, The Last Jedi. But I think that The Force Awakens was a lot of copy pasta. I think they took a lot of themes from that first OT movie. And so,
a little.
Yeah, so where people lean into like that felt like Star Wars and that's their Star Wars they want to see. I'm over here, Last Jedi, new, innovative stories that we didn't think we would ever get. I prefer that. I prefer the stories that you don't see coming. Rian Johnson, he has quotes about he wants this stuff to be 50% received, 50% not liked. What he also means is he wants to surprise fans. Like he says it very negatively because people were trolling him all the time. But it's like, for him, a good movie is not something that everybody goes to and just falls in love with. It's a movie that makes you think. It's a movie that upsets you. But at the same time, if you're a fan of the stuff, I don't know. The people that hate it. I'm like, how do you even, you call yourself a fan? Go talk about something you like then. Okay.
We do every New Year's Day, we do our ranking Star Wars on the channel. And The Last Jedi is either last or first. And very rarely is it in the middle. And it usually ends up towards that. And it usually ends up towards the bottom because of how many last place votes it gets. Yeah, it gets more last than first.
Yeah.
So, so some,
understandably.
And it is what it is. And for me, to be honest, it's somewhere in the middle. I always put in the middle for me. It's somewhere in the middle, whatever. It's
when I'm hearing all the actors say it's so good it could be a standalone. Like, this thing is so good it could be all by itself. And now I'm like, yep, here we are. I'm all by myself now.
And I said earlier, like, it's the most underrated and most overrated, and and that's what I mean, though. It's like either you hate it way too much, or and it's like, we
got to stop hating each other for hating it,
seriously,
and hating
like
each other
for
liking it.
And because it's all subjective, if it's your favorite, and when I say what I say, like I said earlier, I'm not putting your opinion of it down. It's just a grand scheme opinion of like, well, how can you not like it? It's like, well, also, I know people that don't hate it. They're just like, it's not my favorite. And I know people that like it. They're like, I don't hate it. I'd like it. Like, it's all, it can work that way.
A respectable Star Wars fan. That's what that sounds like.
There aren't enough of them left. But it's just like, my favorite's Return of the Jedi. And then, for years it was Return of the Jedi, and for years everybody's was Empire Strikes Back. It's like, you can still like them both. Like, it's not like I'm like, I like Return of the Jedi. F you, Empire Strikes Back. You suck. Like, no. You're both. I love you both. I love A New Hope. I love all the prequels.
I wish we could get the reveals. I wish in the media we had today that we could get the reveals that originally Darth Vader and Anakin were supposed to be two separate people. Yeah. Could you imagine if George Lucas came out, he has sold drop that trilogy and then sells it to Disney, right? And then comes out and goes, oh yeah, by the way, my original trilogy was this, and this, and everybody went like, why didn't you do that? Oh my God, the OT.
And he retconned everything. He retconned, like, George Lucas was the king of retconning. You can't.
I don't
tell
think retconn's a dirty word. I wish people would stop.
No,
it's not a dirty word.
You have to retcon when you're telling a queer a story. You have to. It absolutely.
You don't think that the Ahsoka show is going to have some retcons, man?
Seriously,
Dave Filoni has been begging to tell this on live action. He's going to retcon every single thing about her, dude.
Of course, and Kanan in the Bad Batch, but that's different from the comic. Whatever. We're forgetting how things happen.
Yeah, those are my kind of fans, though. The people that pull those things out of the books and stuff. I love talking to those
let's
people.
Be honest. 3 people read the Kanan comic. That's where they ended it. I got it at the dollar store. I bought the graphic dollar store. It's like, I love when people were complaining about Ms. Marvel and her powers. I'm like, shut up. The 3 people that have ever read a Ms. Marvel comic. Like, get out of my face. You don't care. Shut up. You don't care. That's what drives me nuts. Like, stop. I, like you said, like, the genuine fans, fine. But the people that are, it's like the Lord of the Rings show. Like,
you're going to dig in. This is the hill you're going to die on right now. Okay.
Well, like, they're like, elves all need to be white. Freaking who cares? Who cares?
Well, like, Drist, one of the most famous of the dark elves ever, Baldur's Gate. So it's like, dude, it's all lore. It's all fantasy. The shit's made up.
The people complaining, they've never read that novel. They'll give me a break because they can't read, probably. But like, it's like this what pisses me off. Like, If you love it, fine, you can complain. But if you're just piggybacking off of what some like, I didn't read the Kanan novel. I didn't read the Kanan comic until after Bad Batch. Actually, I owned it. I got it. Like I said, Rob got it for me from the dollar store. Like,
is it good? I haven't.
Yeah, it's pretty good actually. I just think people were like,
I need more books.
And if you can get it for $1, like I did, like Rob, you gotta get it. And it's a fun novel, but it is different. Like what happens with him and his master is different, but not drastically. Just like it's the same outcome. I think that's really what's important is the same outcome. So I had no real issue with that, and I got a kick out of Freddie Prinze Jr. coming back and watching Kanan in that style of animation too. As younger, I got a kick out of it, so I had no problem. But I read it after. But again, the people complaining about it, there was like a brief, the small little group, and then people piggybacking off of it, like, ah, I'm like, you haven't read that comic. I know you haven't because I canceled it, and this many people would have read it, they wouldn't have canceled it. Let's be real here,
right? If you bought more of it.
So, Last Jedi is your favorite movie. Or your favorite of the sequels? Yeah, the sequels. Yeah,
I think so.
It's your favorite movie of all time. It trumps everything. No, favorite sequel movie. You go in to see it. So were you right away impressed with it? Were you kind of conflicted? Because I was a little bit conflicted when I came out. It reminded me a lot of when I saw like Attack of the Clones. I was a little bit like, I didn't know. I wasn't like how people like the hating on it. I remember Josh from Dead Nerds called me like right after. He's like, "What'd you think?" I'm like, "I don't know." He's like, "Me neither." We're kind of like trying to like just figure it out, and I was thinking about it and this and that, and which isn't necessarily a bad thing, maybe not a good thing. I don't know what it was. I gave it an 8 out of 10, I believe, at the time. So when you came out of the movie, what was your initial thought?
It was very jarring. I was 180 from The Force Awakens. I didn't know what to expect, and I was very fascinated by Snoke. So I started like really listening to what Andy Serkis was saying, and they say too much. They're trying to like tiptoe around an origin that he was told. I think it may have been a different origin, because I think at one time we heard Snoke was handsome at one point, and that he suffered actual injuries from Luke Skywalker. That was actually written into a comic. It's, obviously from Snoke's point of view and him talking to Kylo, so it could be manipulation. But it's like, man, completely unexpected film. And I think I gotta go back and watch it, but a lot of the Vader hints too, and the things like the Kylo trying to talk to Vader, finishing what he started. I'm not sure even to this day if I know exactly what he was trying to finish. But yeah, Kylo was a very fascinating character too for me. Not quite as good as Anakin. But Adam Driver's a phenomenal actor. I loved, and this is the thing too, like you go back and watch it now knowing that the dyad was a thing, and you see all the little instances of the water bead, even the water bead like coming through, and there's no water in the room that he's standing in, and that's your first hint of like they can literally pass things back and forth physically between each other now. And I think they should have just driven home more of that. There was too much story in this trilogy to tell. She was a Palpatine, and at the same time she's a dyad. It was crazy. Just an overall crazy Star Wars experience that I'll never forget.
And like you said, there's too much, and that's why they handcuffed themselves with it. It's a trilogy. It's like, just let it go. Just keep going. We don't need to stop. It was still even the Rise of Sky. Even Last Jedi, all the hate it got, bleeding into Rise of Skywalker not making as much money, and then people hating it. It still made over $1 billion. Like you could, like we could keep going, and no one's stopping you from keeping going. But I think that's what you said. I think Rian Johnson, when it came to Last Jedi, really the main interest was Rey and Kylo and their relationship and dynamic. That's really because I'm still to this day, I'm not crazy about Finn's handling. I know people don't like. No, that's my least favorite. And some of the humor for me really, really misses the mark. But like Poe, I actually liked Poe, and I kind of thought. My problem with Poe is he got this in this movie, then he kind of gets it again in the next movie. It's like Poe's like I like Poe in this movie. I like Holdo. There are aspects of it that I like, but the Finn stuff really, I was like, because Finn was my favorite. I went into Force Awakens, wanted like Kylo Ren's the best, and I came out Finn was my favorite. I was also someone that didn't think Finn needed to be Force sensitive because I was fine with him being like the Han Solo of this group or whatever. I was okay with that. But then they made him Force sensitive for really no reason. That's the worst part. Is like they did it.
There was no outcome to it. Yeah.
No, it's like why bother? Like why bother? Just make him who he is. So I was fine with So I thought he was better in Rise of Skywalker, aside from really serving no purpose. But I think they needed to. Again, we could dwell on this, but I think one of the things too was George Lucas made stuff up as he went along, but he had an end game with the prequels, whereas there was no end game for the sequels, and that was the first thing I think Disney and Lucasfilm, and like they just had to be like, this is where we're ending. How do we get there? And you can be like, how do you get there? Then everybody can make it up as you go along, as long as you know where it ends. And that's the one thing that I think a lot of people have problems with the Rise of Skywalker is you really get the sense of no one knew where it was ending.
Yeah.
until you get there.
They even said it. They said it.
And that's why
so when all
that yourself to a trilogy.
Yeah. Well, and when all that stuff started coming out about how Daisy even said like 2 weeks before they weren't sure who her daddy was going to be and stuff like that, I pushed back so hard on those fans. It's like The Last Jedi at least tried to do something with what they were given. Like when I complain about these films, I complain about what I think are more of the real life implications of making Han Solo, for instance, a deadbeat father who leaves his kid. In the day and age that we live in now, bro, with the percentage of families that are divorcing and stuff like that, like Star Wars is supposed to be this uplifting, hopeful story. And I don't think there was any reason why Han Solo needed to be the catalyst in the downfall of Kylo. I mean, he was never trained. He never really had guidance as a kid. They sent him to Luke at what age? Like 6, 7. He was maybe even too old then. But they rushed all this stuff. They could have told us more about Snoke. They could have done flashbacks to young Kylo being manipulated by a voice, even like not one flashback to a younger Rey, like the Rey flashbacks. Like, tell us more. They tried to tiptoe around the stuff because they didn't really know where they were going.
Yeah, and they went to the original trilogy without the prequel trilogy. Like they started after like the interesting stuff happened. They started. It's like, but we want to see that. Like, yeah, there was some choices, but it is what it is. I think for the most part,
it's supposed to be a quiet time too, kind of in the universe. After a massive galactic battle happens, everyone's picking up the pieces. It would have been really cool to see that story and where I think we're gonna get all that young Luke.
I think we will too. I think you know what? I don't want it in a book. I want it on TV on Disney Plus or a movie, I guess. But that's where I want it for sure. Okay, so Rise of Skywalker now. Last Jedi is your favorite film of all time. You go into Rise of Skywalker. Were you disappointed in it or were you accepting of it? How did you feel?
I liked it. I do still put it higher than Force Awakens. Force Awakens now is my least favorite again, just because it felt too much like a layup, like they were just taking the easy way out.
100%. It's always been, I think, since The Last Jedi, it's been the my bottom of my list for the same reason. It just feels like they weren't doing anything in it. Like I compared to a donut, Scotty. I call it a donut. It is delicious, but it's empty calories.
Yeah. For sure. I like it. I like that actually a lot. But they got me so many times in that film, like the fake killing of Chewie. Do that stuff. That should have been throughout the whole film. Like lightning should have came out of her fingers a long time before that one event. Like her anger, things like that. All those little hints. I wish the dyad would have been something that was leaned into more. She should have read about it before, she found all this stuff. She should have read about that before meeting Palpatine. I think it would have been cool if she had figured something out between her and Kylo. The Trevorrow. I go back to the Trevorrow script. Do you have that?
You know what? I've never taken a look at it.
I think I still have the link for the site that I found it on.
I've never taken a look at it because I almost don't want to know. But also, okay, wait, but you like the Trevorrow script?
Yes, and I'll tell you why I think you should take a look at it. Because he has credits still for Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
And a lot of the concept art, I think, is still going to play. I have a big theory I'm making a video on. I have been making it for months.
I'll just tell you one thing, though. I saw the Jurassic World trilogy. I don't know if it was necessarily a bad thing to lose.
Yeah, I hear you. But
because
did you hear
also,
what John Boyega said recently?
What did he say? Well, he did Lord of the Rings. Yeah, what did he say?
Well, John Boyega.
Oh, not Boyega. J. Bayona did it. Yeah.
No, John Boyega said recently that when he saw the Trevorrow script or got pulled in to talk to him at first, it was just like two nerds geeking out about how amazing this stuff was going to be. Like, he loved every moment of it. I think it had the Force, Finn with the Force going on in there. But that script's awesome, dude. It's awesome. Hux is collecting Jedi lightsabers and trying to learn things about the Force, like to teach himself to become Force sensitive or something like that. He pulls the samurai killing themselves. I think he does it with Mace Windu's saber. Like, God,
I've seen the concept art. Like, I've seen that stuff. I haven't read it.
Do that, Star Wars.
I don't want to.
Big epic films.
And then the Rise of Skywalker came, and then they crapped on that script, and they're like, write a new one, and they rushed it in.
Rushed.
I like Rise of Skywalker. I have a lot of fun with Rise of Skywalker, I should say. It was on TV a little while ago, and I found myself just sitting and watching it with commercials, weirdly. And I'm like, I enjoy this movie for what it is. But again, you don't need to end it. You can keep going. Give us a 10, 11, 12. Like, you could keep it going, and we're going to show up and maybe make it every 3 years, not every other year like it used to be. Like, make it an event for us to go to.
That should have had a cliffhanger, in my opinion. It should not have had a bookend.
Yeah, well,
I think it should have had a.
Oh, could you imagine if we're all in the theater, Scotty, and it ends on a cliffhanger and the credits roll, and it's like all of a sudden, like, next in 2 years, blah blah blah.
Yeah,
like, would have been
episode
thrilling.
10.
Yeah,
dude,
but it's not. We'll never get that.
Yeah, you think we'll ever get a 10?
Yeah, I think we have to. I think. I
agree.
What you do is you make it 10, but it's not the Skywalker saga. You acknowledge the history, like I said, of this was the past, and now this is 10, and we're going to start something new, and then you just keep going.
Moving on.
Yeah, like we move on. But like I said, like
unknown regions, man, please.
Yeah. But as long as you just acknowledge, and you don't even have to make a big deal out of it. It's just the history is X. Like, there was an emperor, blah blah blah. Now we're not there anymore. We're over here, and then you keep going. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. What do you love The Mandalorian? Is that like right up there? Are you someone that wakes up at 3 a.m. every whenever day it drops now? Wednesday, Friday.
For that show, I did. Maybe later episodes, I don't know if I did, but I was very much into that show. And it's because Mandalore, man, we know nothing about the third strongest faction in all of Star Wars. It's always been the Sith, the Jedi, and the Mandalorians. Now we're finally getting their history. I hope we do someday get a Mandalorian Jedi. I think this show's gonna lead to.
I think we're on our way. I'm curious how this show's gonna end when we know the sequel trilogy. Like, that's where I'm curious.
Yeah.
Like, does it go like this?
Because like you were saying, all these characters exist in this part of the timeline, and that's why Snoke couldn't be something other than what he was. So kind of same thing. It's gonna all lead up to that.
Yeah, I think they're gonna do a good job, because Clone Wars did such a great job of Attack of the Clones
they're all meeting Luke Skywalker. Literally every character
it's true.
Even Giancarlo Esposito, like they all know who he is.
Yeah,
they're all well aware.
Exactly. Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. What about Boba Fett? Yeah.
Before we skip over that, I would love Battle of Jakku. Luke Skywalker, Battle of Jakku. Lead right up to that.
I don't think we'll get that. But yeah, that would be fun. If it ends like that, that'd be cool. What do you think of the second season? Were you up there on the second season as much as the first?
It's weird because the first season for me, some of the episodes very Western, very just like, okay, that was an episode. But the second season started to get more into the Mandalore stuff and him actually figuring out where he belongs in their rankings. That's what I love. I think the third season is going to be phenomenal. The Game of Thrones of Star Wars, and Favreau has said that numerous times. That's what he wants it to feel like. I hope that the saber passes hands a few times. I hope we can get a few different, we get a combat switching of hands. Maybe someone passes away, the saber has to change back hands. But I don't want to see one person, because in the end, I think we will eventually get one person, but it'll be earned more or less.
Who do you think?
I think it's got to be Din. I think it has to be Din. And if it's not Din, it's going to be like Grogu or something crazy. Like
something's up with Grogu.
Jedi. Yeah, I think he could be that. That line, man, we've talked about this before. A Mandalorian and a Jedi, they'll never see it coming. Yeah. I think this is him. I think we were not meant to ignore that line. I think he's going to be leading the Mandalorian as a Force sensitive for the next 800 years. Who knows, man?
Yeah.
The rebirth of Mandalore.
Oh man, there's so much. I can't wait for season 3. What about Boba Fett? What did you wake up for that? Did you like Book of? I
started to wake up for that.
I am someone who has been on record, as you know, who loves the Book of Boba Fett. I was all in from the get-go, and I loved it. I loved it when they threw in the Mandalorian. I loved it all. I want to know your thoughts.
I've become very over analytic now about the TV shows because they do have scenes. This is like my most nuclear hateful thing I'll ever say about the TV productions, but do you remember Wishbone?
The dog?
Yes.
Yes.
And they would tell the history lessons, right?
Yeah.
So very, very rarely is there a scene in a Star Wars TV show where I'm like, Wishbone's telling history right now. And it's the Leia getting chased through the woods scene. It's the bike chase scene that everyone complains about, but like, it's just kind of campy. Like some of the stuff is getting real campy, and I gotta look past it because they're like, why do the scenes have to be in there? Why do they have to be so like? They're low budget, are they not? You're the film guy. Are you getting pulled out by any scenes in any of the TV shows? Boba Fett specifically and Obi-Wan.
Boba Fett. Not so much. I know the speeder stuff, but it kind of reminded me of the prequel. Like I thought George Lucas would do that. So I was kind of like, Boba Fett. No, there might have been a few things, but Obi-Wan Kenobi, I will say, because people love to crap on the volume now, and I still think it's a brilliant tool. I think it's a brilliant tool. Like the Batman used it. Like I think it's been used beautifully. But there have been
it's how you use it.
Yeah, when characters are running, it doesn't translate well. I find, and that I'm just like, why? Like they're running like on a slow treadmill. At least pick up the speed or something. Like. Yeah, so those are my things. It's mostly Obi-Wan I found though. Book of Boba Fett. I've seen it like I think I've seen it once and then like half of it once. I'm still watching this. So I'd have to go back and really pay attention to it. But like the spinning, stuff like that didn't bother me. But in Obi-Wan, there was some running that was happening. And I was like, this isn't.
The other scene is where he worked. It was just like 2 scaffoldings and tables, but everything else was volume. And you could tell, obviously. But so some of that stuff pulls me out of it. And it's just like where I'm kind of getting real close to like the TV shows just not being it for me.
And it's Andor's not going to have that. Andor didn't use the volume at all.
Yes,
but I think the volume's good and bad. I think the volume, you got to know when to use it, when not to use it. But it's also, these episodes cost $10 million an episode, which is a lot of money, but it isn't a lot of money at the same time when you consider everything going on. And when the amount of time they have to do it, it's probably more feasible and cost efficient to do it on the volume than to travel to Ireland and Australia and go all New Zealand, go all around. They'll just do it in their backyard because it's Star Wars. And I was in when I was in college and the prequels came out, I talked to my film professor and I said something about Star Wars, and because George Lucas just announced they were going to shoot Attack of the Clones. It was episode 2 is going to do it all digital. I remember talking, I said, well, what do you think of that? Like going digital? He goes, what does it matter? It's all a cartoon anyway. He goes,
yeah,
everything's created digitally anyway, so it doesn't really matter what they shoot on. And I was like, that's kind of a unique way to think about it. Like, because I know, like on Twitter, especially, people who don't know the business love to obsess about the business and how they do things. And it's like, and I have like a little, like my toe, like I make short films, like nothing spectacular, but like, so you kind of understand, like, so they have an understanding of it, and I'm sure they use it. There is a real reason why it's used that we are not privy. We don't even need to know. We just need to watch it. But again, if it takes you out of it, then that's something to look at and reconsider as well. And I think as time goes on, you're going to see it used less and less. Like there's a time when green screen, you can always tell green screen, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even in the original trilogy, you had the black lines around the X-Wing fighters and stuff. They took those up for the special editions. Like as time goes on, they're going to get better at it, perfect it, understand, and maybe they'll get a treadmill that goes over 2.5. I don't know.
We'll get people that innovate it too. Like I imagine a volume that's not a full screen, but it's like partial screens integrated into like a more full scene. But yeah, push that stuff. I feel like Lucasfilm has not been doing that recently.
No, I mean, like
their new trilogy didn't really push cinema.
No,
like George, George would rather his films fall on their face as long as he was like, I did this. Now everyone's doing this because I did that.
Which is kind of like what Favreau did with the Mandalorian with the volume, right? They use the technology from Jungle Book, from Lion King.
I think if we ever get the freaking Rogue One movie, I think the volume is going to blow people's minds in that. All the dog fights and stuff, like you were saying, the spinning inside ships with the volume, that stuff.
Yeah, you could do. Yeah. There's a use for, and then there's some things I definitely don't. But Andor's coming out. You said you're not looking so forward to that, but are you going to wake up at 3 a.m. to watch the first 3 episodes?
I probably will wake. Like I've always waked up to watch the premieres, so I definitely
3 of them.
Yeah, but if they're showing all 3. Is it going to release at like a midnight type of thing?
Yeah. No, I don't know. Maybe I'd like if they did that again, but
I don't know if I'll pull that off. I'll probably, if I start them though, that's what me. Like if I get up early and I start it, I have to finish them. And it's spoilers, really. Like it's just because I don't want the stuff to get spoiled for me.
It's bad.
So it's like put your phone down for 3 days so you can watch them.
Well, that was when Star Wars, when the sequels came out, I went dark online for like until I watched from the world premiere until I saw it. I was like, see ya. I'm not going to be on social media, avoiding all comment. Well, I haven't seen Multiverse of Madness yet, but I think I've seen the entire movie just from people posting stuff. It's wild what you, without even trying, is the worst part. Like I wasn't trying to see that movie online, but I immediately saw it all. So we'll see.
I think Andor is gonna be a lot of trouble, actually.
Yeah.
From rumblings and things and interviews, it's going to be very, very political, very, very current political. And I think they're doing that on purpose, man. I think they're trying to show that Star Wars is for everyone, man. Your OT trilogy Star Wars timelines are not just yours. There's people in the galaxy being affected, like us, like modern humans today are being affected the same way the Empire was acting. So that kind of talk scares me because that's all we're going to hear about. I don't think people are going to enjoy the story as much as fans think, but I'm going to do my best. And I hope that if nothing else, it changes people's perspectives. I think a lot of fans have a very small world view. I've been just trying to if you can't have sympathy for the human experience and the fact that living on this planet is hard for people, I just can't have conversations with you about the fandom because you're going to go down a road I can't go down.
Road I can't follow.
Yeah, man.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on Andor when it comes out in a little while. But until then, Sky, thanks for a lot of them. Yeah. Thanks for joining me on the Outlander Club. Where can everybody find you at?
It's Hawks Holocrons everywhere. Very active on Twitter, Instagram. But on the Hawks Holocrons YouTube channel, all the videos have my social links. So come follow, say what's up. Haven't been hanging out with James for a while, but
we'll figure that.
We're gonna do a big DC thing here too. Once we get some announcements, once they spend some money on promotions.
No DC fandom this year.
I know.
So wild. All right, thanks so much for joining me. This is the Outlander Club, where we talk about your Star Wars story. We'll be back next time. Thanks everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe. And until next time, may the force of others be with you.
Hey scumbags, thanks for watching. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up on our video. As always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Rebel Scum Podcast, for all the latest videos.